Well, you're right. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio have all demanded an apology, and I'm happy to apologize. I apologize to the millions of New Yorkers who've been let down by liberal politicians in that state. I apologize to the hardworking men and women of the state of New York who've been denied jobs because Governor Cuomo won't allow fracking, even though there have been many high-paying jobs just south in Pennsylvania. New Yorkers are denied the ability to provide for their families. I apologize to all the pro-life and pro-marriage and pro-Second Amendment New Yorkers who were told by Governor Cuomo that they have no place in New York because that's not who New Yorkers are. I apologize to all the small businesses who've been driven out of New York City by crushing taxes and regulations. I apologize to all of the African American children who Mayor de Blasio tried to throw out of their charter schools that were providing a lifeline to the American dream. And I apologize to all the cops and the firefighters and 9/11 heroes who had no choice but to stand and turn their backs on Mayor de Blasio because Mayor de Blasio over and over again stands with the looters and criminals rather than the brave men and women of blue. But I do have good news to the good people of New York. I believe 2016 is going to be an election like 1980, and help is on the way. People are waking up, and just like millions of New Yorkers, they're fed up with policies that don't fight for the working men and women of this country, but instead further the elite liberal views that have taken this country down a path that is not working. Everyone understands that the values in New York City are socially liberal or pro-abortion or pro-gay marriage, focus around money and the media. And I guess I can frame it another way. Not a lot of conservatives come out of Manhattan. I'm just saying.
And welcome back to Hannity. So one of the most talked about moments from last night's debate was when Donald Trump and Senator Ted Cruz went back and forth over the issues of New York values. Now, during their heated exchange, Cruz referenced the sit-down interview that Trump did with Tim Russert back in 1999. Here's what Cruz was talking about.
Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice. I hate the concept of abortion. I hate it. I hate everything it stands for. I cringe when I listen to people debating the subject. But I just believe in choice. And again, it may be a little bit of a New York background because there is some different attitude in different parts of the country. And, you know, I was raised in New York and grew up and work and everything else in New York City. But I am strongly for choice, and yet I hate the concept of abortion.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect.
Republican presidential candidate, Senator Ted Cruz. You know, Senator, this is interesting from my perspective because Andrew Cuomo, the governor, once said, if you're pro-life, if you're pro-Second Amendment, we don't want you in New York. And I made a big deal about it. And I had all these governors, including the Texas governor at the time, it was Rick Perry, inviting me to become a Texas resident. Rick Scott in Florida invited me to be a Floridian, and the North Carolina governor. There are different values. Do you know that, and I want to ask you about this, because the New York Daily News was not kind to you today. It said, "Drop Dead Ted," which, by the way, is typical New York headline. But if you live in New York versus where you live in Texas, you pay 14% more in income tax between state and city tax, almost 14% more.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is an 8-to-1 differentiation in terms of registration, Democrat to Republican. What did you think of that exchange? I don't think you're going to be getting a lot of New York liberals voting for you.
Well, that's probably a fair assessment. Listen, everyone knows what New York values are. As you've noted, we tried to woo you to come down to Texas because the New York politicians are doing everything they can to chase you out of there. Of course, we all honor and revere the first responders, the police officers and firemen who rushed into the Twin Towers. I have been standing and fighting for the cops and law enforcement and the incredible heroes every day of the campaign, and Donald knows that. He also knows that the origin of why I said that was that he did a long interview with Tim Russert, where he explained where he found his political views and values, and he said they all came from New York. So he told Tim Russert he was very, very pro-choice. He supported partial birth abortion. He was open to gay marriage, and all of that, he said, you got to understand, I'm from New York. Those aren't Iowa values, and this is Donald speaking. He said that's what New Yorkers believe, and that's why I believe it. So Donald used that as an explanation for his own views. And you know what? He's right. Those aren't Iowa values. They're not South Carolina values. They're not even New Hampshire values. And if you look at the media elite, if you look at the elite in New York who try to set the stage, and New York Daily News is a great example where, you know, they ran another front page blasting me because I was lifting up the victims of violence in prayer. And they find prayer offensive. And that's what people understand when you talk about that. You know, I'm reminded of the old Pace Pecani commercial where they're sitting around looking at some pecani sauce and they say, "Where was this made?" "New York City." Get a rope. People understand elite, out-of-touch media opinion.
And, well, that would be Washington, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I think you can name a lot of places,
absolutely.
Right? Let me ask you this, Senator, because there's a real serious side, and I thought last night's debate was enlightening. It was informative. It was substantive. It had everything that I wanted, and I thought there were great exchanges on all sides. But there's a really serious part of this debate, which is I believe America is in decline. When you have 94.5 million Americans out of the labor force, 50 million in poverty, 46 million on food stamps, you have a doubling of the debt in 8 years, median income down, housing sales down. It is scary to me that we've got to turn this around. That, to me, is about those people that are suffering needlessly and, of course, defending the country against ISIS and radical Islamists. So explain in the last minute that we have here how you can do that if you get elected.
Right. Look, people are hurting and they're scared. Obama's State of the Union was more a state of denial, claiming the economy is doing great. Working men and women are getting left behind, but we know how to fix this. We get back to the common sense principles that built America. We pass a simple flat tax. We repeal Obamacare. The economy will take off. There will be jobs and small businesses growing everywhere. And I'll tell you who I listen to and who gives me encouragement. You know, I started the week, the debate wasn't the coolest part of this week. I started this week going duck hunting with Phil Robertson and the whole Duck Dynasty clan. I got to tell you, it was amazing fun. By the way, Phil,
down there. Yeah.
Phil is an amazing shot. That man knows how to handle a shotgun. And Phil ended up endorsing me, which was incredibly cool. We put together this video with me in camo and face paint, and my girls, Caroline and Catherine, thought it was the funniest thing in the world to see Daddy in face paint with Phil Robertson. But you know what? That represents the working men and women, the backbone of this country. Those are who we're fighting for. And if we get back to those values in that duck blind in Louisiana, that's how we turn the country around. And I'm optimistic because people are waking up in incredible numbers and understand that that's what we're going to do.
All right, here with reaction, the author of the new book, a bestseller, Duplicity, Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. It is fascinating how this has taken off. Andrew Cuomo, the governor, he wants an apology. Hillary wants an apology. Comrade de Blasio wants an apology. I live in New York. I pay 14 cents more of every dollar I make between state and city taxes. And the governor said, if I'm right to life and you're pro-Second Amendment and you believe in traditional marriage, there's no place for you in New York.
There is something there. It's perfectly fair to say to Trump, so where are you today on partial birth abortion and a number of other issues that he, back in his New York days, he sort of was, he was a standard New Yorker, and that means he was well to the left of the Republican primary base.
All right, here now with reaction is 2016 Republican presidential candidate, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, what a night. You know, of all the debates, I thought last night was the best so far. How did you feel about it?
Sean, thank you. It's great to be with you. I thought last night was terrific. I think we had some clear contrast, I think last night helped the voters continue making the decisions they're making right now, which really the most important decision is who's best prepared to be commander-in-chief. That, I think, dwarfs every other question in this race. And I think the voters are looking at the individuals on that stage and assessing who has the knowledge, who has the experience, who has the judgment, who has the clarity of vision, who has the strength of resolve to keep this country safe. And that I think the reason that our campaign is surging, that we're seeing conservatives uniting behind our campaign, is more and more people are coming to the conclusion that I'm best prepared to keep America safe, particularly when we began yesterday by seeing in the newspapers pictures of 10 American sailors on their knees with their hands over their head. I mean, it was horrifying. And it encapsulates the weakness and ineptitude of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. People are fed up with it, and they want a strong president, not someone who will be cowed by the Ayatollah Khamenei.
I want to go back to that. Let me give you, though, a chance to follow up on this issue of eligibility. I agree with you. I've looked at the law. I've looked at the Constitution. I've looked at subsequent provisions within the law that actually state your exact situation, that if you have a mother that is a citizen and a father who has been here for a certain amount of time, and it goes into all the details. Do you think this is an obfuscation? Why do you think Mr. Trump is bringing this up?
Well, listen, the legal issue is straightforward. It has been true from the very first days of our nation that the child of a U.S. citizen born abroad is a citizen by birth. That is why when our soldiers are serving overseas and they have children overseas, their children are natural-born citizens. That's why John McCain, even though he was born in Panama, was eligible to run for president. It's why American missionaries, when they're spreading the gospel, when they're traveling overseas, the children of American missionaries are natural-born citizens. That's why George Romney, Mitt's dad, who ran in 1968, was eligible to run for president, even though he'd been born in Mexico to Mormon missionary parents. And so the legal issue is clear-cut, it is straightforward, but it's not complicated why Donald is raising this. He's raising it because his poll numbers are falling. And at the end of the day, it is a distraction from the substance. It is not a consequential legal issue. But I'll tell you what it is it's catnip for reporters. Reporters love to focus on it. The good news, Sean, in my experience, the voters could not care less. They recognize these are serious times, and we don't need sideshows. We need a serious leader. And so I'm keeping the focus on the issues that matter to the American people. How do we bring back jobs and growth and opportunity so young people have a future? How do we defend the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our Second Amendment, our First Amendment, our religious liberty, and how do we keep America safe? That's my focus. And I think more and more that is the voters' focus, even if the mainstream media reporters can't figure that out.
Let me go back to the issue, and you were very passionate last night in your opening talking about these 10 sailors, and you're right, it broke my heart as well to see them with their hands up or their hands behind their back and their head. How would you have handled that? And do you see the connection? Because this is the week that we begin the implementation of what is a horrible deal, transferring $150 billion to the Iranian mullahs, and do you think it's connected?
It's absolutely connected, and this is a result. Every bad actor on earth has taken the measure of Barack Obama, and they've determined he's not a credible threat. He will not stand up for America, and he can be bowled over. I think the next year is going to be unbelievably dangerous because every bad actor, whether Ayatollah Khamenei, whether Putin in Russia, whether China, whether North Korea, they are going to do. The only limits on the bad conduct they do is the limits of their own strength. I mean, it is a Hobbesian state of nature. It's like Lord of the Flies. And it is going to be a dangerous year because when the American president is a laughingstock, we've seen that once before with Jimmy Carter, and it is not good for America, it's not good for the world. Now, here's the silver lining, Sean. That can change overnight. It's worth remembering this same nation, Iran, in 1981, released our hostages the day Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. That's the difference a strong commander-in-chief makes. And so, if I were president, I do not believe Khamenei would have dared seize these ships. And if he had, number one, he wouldn't be getting $150 billion. He would be getting zero. But number two, any dictator that attempts to capture U.S. soldiers will face the full force and fury of the United States of America. And we will not have any servicemen and women on their knees if I'm elected president. That is not going to happen.
What should the reaction be at this point? Because I agree with you. A message I think needs to be sent. I think the president should have immediately, I don't know why he made the deal in the first place, but he should have at least temporarily stopped the deal, demanded the immediate release, and then John Kerry goes out and says, "Oh, thank you so much for returning our sailors." I felt embarrassed listening to this.
Look, it is, unfortunately, this is an administration that does not defend America. It is painful to watch, but it's also why people are so frustrated. Listen, following Paris and San Bernardino, the president gives this nationally televised address where he doesn't even say radical Islamic terrorism. Instead, he goes into this impassioned attack on Islamophobia. I mean, for Pete's sakes, how about focusing on keeping America safe? He says the answer is to take away our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. I think people are so frustrated. What is wrong when the President of the United States can't even see these people are our enemies, they have declared war on us, and they want to kill us? And President Obama is an apologist for radical Islamic terrorism. He gives rationalizations and justifications. You know, John Kerry said the Islamic attack on Charlie Hebdo, that was understandable. He rationalized it. This is Looney Tunes, and it's why, Sean, people are waking up at such incredible numbers. You know, every event we do all over the country, whether Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, anywhere, just about every single event, people come up to me and say, "I'm a Democrat. I voted for Barack Obama. I'm a union member. I'm with you." Every single event. And it's just like in 1980, Reagan Democrats, they were all FDR Democrats. And they were fed up with Jimmy Carter's weakness and groveling and appeasement to Iran and to our enemies, and they came over. The same thing is happening. It's why we're going to win. And 2016, I believe, will be an election like 1980.
Because you now have had a lead in Iowa. You have challenged Donald Trump where no other candidate has challenged him. We're 17 days away. How important is Iowa for you moving forward? And more importantly, looking out, if you were to become the nominee for the Republican Party, tell me some states that you think might be in play that perhaps in recent presidential election years have not been in play for Republicans.
Right. Well, listen, Iowa is very important, but we don't view any state as a must-win. I believe we'll do well in Iowa. I hope we'll do well and believe we'll do well in New Hampshire. I believe we'll do well in South Carolina. But we don't view any of those early states as must-wins. We're running a national campaign. We're all in Iowa, all in New Hampshire, all in South Carolina, all in Nevada. And then 10 days after South Carolina is Super Tuesday, the so-called SEC primary. States like Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Those are conservative states. They are military veterans, gun owners. They fear God. They love this country, and they're fed up with what Obama is doing. I think Super Tuesday is going to be an amazing day for us. And so we're competing hard to win every one of the early states, but unlike a lot of the candidates on that stage, we don't view any of the states as a must-win. And we have put together a national campaign based on the grassroots. Now, you asked about the general. Our base is the conservatives who've been staying home, the millions of evangelicals who've been staying home. It's millions of young people who are fed up with 7 years of Obama stagnation and the assault on their rights. And then it is the Reagan Democrats. I think the single strongest part of our base are the working men and women, the union members, the truck drivers and mechanics and electricians, the Ohio steel workers and the Michigan auto workers. And so states that I think we will compete very well in that the previous Republicans haven't include states like Ohio, but also Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Colorado, Virginia. All of these are states where you've got working men and women who are getting hammered by the Obama economy, and they're fed up with what's going on. And I think we will see an election in 2016. In 1980, the New York Times said, 2 weeks before the election, the New York Times had a banner headline: President Carter will be reelected by double digits. The media never saw it coming.
That didn't happen.
And yet Reagan won an incredible victory because working men and women said, this is nuts and we want America back. I think the same thing is going to happen. I believe we will win by painting in bold colors, not pale pastels, and that's the coalition we're seeing.